You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
Hey everybody, this is Ken Vellante with your art and philosophy podcast, Something Rather Than Nothing. And a few months ago, I asked Caledonia Curry, SWOON, an artist I followed for some time, to come on to the show, and I am just so pleased to have you here. Welcome to Something Rather Than Nothing, SWOON.
Hello, how's it going?
Wonderful. I'm recording here in the sun, Portland, Oregon, and so excitement about and talking to you, but I really want to hear about your thinking about art. And one of my initial questions is about, was there a moment that you became an artist, that your identity, where you're like, I'm arting now.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Yeah.
me. This is me. Yeah.
There was. I'm one of those people that thinks that the truth is that, art is really about not stopping being an artist. That sort of philosophy really rings true for me. But there also was a moment for me, and it was when I was 10 years old, and my mom saw an ad in the local newspaper for painting classes, and she took me to it. And it turned out to be like a retiree painting classes, like in the style of Bob Ross, leading you through an oil painting. And I was the only kid, and we got there, and my mom was like, "Oops." And they were like, "No, it's totally fine. Just leave her with us. We'll teach her too." And they did. And it was an incredible experience being led through, that painting and being with all these adults. And I mean, being 10 years old and painting for 5 hours straight was pretty epic. And then when I left, I had this painting, and it looked like a painting. And I got so much, people were like, "Whoa, you did that." Of course, a lot of it had to do with being in that class, but the fact that I was getting so much affirmation at a time when I really deeply was craving that, it just totally solidified it for me. And I was like, this is me. This is what I'm doing forevermore.
Yeah, there was not to assume, but the component of some older folks there and sharing that space and time, and being accepted in there.
Having them give you attention and energy and confidence, and I would say "Oh, I can't do it. I'm only 10." And they would say, "Nope, you don't hear me saying I can't do it. I'm already 80. So if I can do it, you can do it." They just had this kind of excellent way of, and they just made me feel welcomed and special, but they also didn't take shit from me. They were just like, "No, show up, do it."
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that so much. I mean, part of when I talk about art that excites me is that it's alive in the world, and in looking at your art, there's components of the way that I view things, of the energy around working together in collectivism. And there's a particular piece in your work, and I don't mean to be trite about this, because the idea of what art does for us in the healing process. For me, in doing the podcast and painting, I've discovered recently just a whole open area for healing and expression that I didn't realize that was there.
Oh yeah, big time.
And so there's that power there. How do you cultivate the space, the space for that to be part of the art experience, for there to be the potential for healing or cure in the art itself?
Yeah. Well, I think that the first truth of art is that, let's just take visual art, but I think sort of any art form, what you're doing is you're taking the absolute fucking chaos of your mind, and you're going, all of it goes here. All of it. This, nope, come back. It just has this way of getting all your ducks in a row, and then they're whoop, and then you're focused in on something. And I don't believe that there is a way to do that and not have it be a calming experience. And so I think that there's just this kind of natural component of empowerment, of resilience building. Um, like I just think it's just good for you to do that. And it doesn't matter, you know, you could be doing that in archery or horseback riding. You know, it's really, it could be really any activity, but the fact is you're bringing yourself to it in earnestness, in full focus. And there's something about that that's just like almost always good for us. And so I think like that's where you're starting. So then what do you what's the next thing that you build from there? Are you now saying like, okay, I'm taking this thing that calms me and centers me, and now I'm going to also, you know, bring in some like things that are disturbing me, maybe like memories or subjects that are really challenging me. How about if I bring that into this space? Or how about if I, you know, do this kind of fun active focus, but like together with a bunch of friends? You know, I think that, you know, there's just some elemental things that happen within the art making process. And one of the things that I discovered when I was first starting to work with groups is that you could be scrubbing a floor together. It honestly doesn't matter. Humans love to do a thing together. We love it. It's fun. Like
Yeah.
it's true. And so having a common goal is, there's something energizing about it. It's like, okay, here's the thing. And we all get together around it. We decide that this is important and we do it together. And the fact is we couldn't do it by ourselves. Like if it's something really big, you know, let's say we, you know, we want to, anything that we want to build something, or even just back to the floor cleaning. Well, it's a really big floor, you know, we want to clean up this kitchen and throw a dinner. You know, if I had to do that by myself, I would be crying. But if we do it together, you know, we can get this amazing thing accomplished. And it's not just about what we can accomplish. It's like this synchronicity that happens like between us while we're doing it. It just feels good. It feels we're together. We know what we're doing together. Like um there's just something like elementally good about that. So, you know, again, once you take that truth that like we love to do something together, and then we're going, well, what are we doing together? You know, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Yeah. Oh, no, just thank you. Thank you so much. I think about one of the big questions, you know, like thinking current, right? So like I've entered 2026. I think about 2026 is a different year. There's a bunch of shit going on. We talked about it in different ways. When we think about like public space, folks, intimidation, fear, violence, for like, you know, basically the presence of folks. I want to know, is there something different about public art, or what you're trying to do now, or is it like expected to art the same way? Like, is there some fundamental shift for activity in the public space that you're responding to, or is, you know, just
You
the
mean with the
terrain is
rise of
shifted?
fascism in our country?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I mean, the thing is, I'm actually not working on big public projects right now.
yeah,
So I'm in a more internal space, which means that I personally am not really responding in that same kind of collective way than I may have been 20 years ago.
yeah,
Um, and so I do wonder, you know, I believe that like there is a relationship no matter what you're doing to the kind of, you know, psychological and emotional processing of the moment. And so I think there's the, you know, the importance of public art though for the people that are creating it and for everyone else is the sense that we maintain access to our public spaces, and that the sense that the people can participate in our public spaces. You know, I think it's more true now than ever, but ever since I ever started making art, there was this sort of increasing attack on the commons. There was this kind of
yeah,
increasing sense that, you know, the sort of forces of centralization of power are always working to separate and to isolate and to sort of gain domination over people's hearts and minds. And one of the like real common things that turns up over and over again is trying to make public gathering more illegal and trying to make public art um more difficult to do, because that's so, you know, and the reason, like, I did street art and graffiti for many, many years. And one of the favorite, Espo, who was like a really influential when I was, first making work, he said graffiti always has to stay illegal. And I the reason I love that, and I totally do legal public art projects at this point in
Yeah.
my life, but the importance of there always being sort of a realm and like an active layer of illegal street interventions is that it is never going to be okay for all communication and culture to have to go through approved channels. People have to be able to spontaneously communicate and communicate with each other, particularly as we see these kind of systems of control tightening around us.
In my host role, I remind myself in my head my host role because I was just listening to you right there, and really just thinking about the comments and the idea of public space, and the idea of illegality, right? Then there has to be a space that's challenged, or like that. I wanted to ask you a different question. I become fascinated. By art around the world. Like in doing the podcast, sometimes I really love to drop into artists and being like, if they're down in Albuquerque, it's like, can you tell me what's going down in like Albuquerque music? Like drop right into it. When you've gone to these different places and locations, is there one or in particular that has just kind of swayed and kind of moved you in a way you didn't expect, you being new to that geographical area?
New York.
New York.
I didn't expect to live here.
New York.
I moved here to go to school, and I thought I would leave as soon as I was done and kind of travel and graduate. But what I found is that the intensity of the energy of New York never lets me go. It's like my,
Uh-huh.
after all these years, I still love it. Although I do find everywhere I do go, I'm always like, oh my God, this place is so cool. Like this year I was in Wyoming. I was in Laramie.
Okay.
And I was also in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And both of those places, I was like, yo, y'all are so cool here. Like
Yeah.
the artists that are making it happen no matter where you are, it's like the fact that you're going to build up your art community and make that happen in whatever place you are. Like I just feel like that is like, I don't know, it just makes it so cool that you're building it up in a place that might be considered an unlikely place like Laramie, Wyoming.
Sure. Sure.
It's like the kind of spirit that rises to that challenge is like a very fucking cool person. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like the sense of like, get it done and do it together. I was just down in Baton Rouge and they have, this sort of carnival culture there. And they do this thing called the Surreal Salon, and they were bringing everybody together to just do this amazing ball that's been going for almost 20 years. And so I feel like whenever I do travel, I'm always like struck by just how like every single place, like all it takes is people coming together and continuing to come together like year after year and just be like, this is us, we're doing this. And like something really beautiful emerges.
Yeah, like in the way that you approach it and interact, say with the group of folks, is there something you do to eliminate the barrier for them that can exist for so many humans of being like that art is accessible and that we can do it now and that we can do it together? It remains a hang up, both in identity. Is there something you do to help folks be comfortable being the artist with you and with the project when it's done in that way?
I mean, I guess it depends on what the project is, because there's, some projects I work on where it really is like, this is my very specific vision and I need help executing that vision. And so I think, it's the way that people participate with me in that is much more and like really rallying around the specific vision. And then there are other projects where the goal is actually more about kind of finding what it is that's healing or that's galvanizing about art. And that's when you get into sort of coming up with a project and just kind of getting started. And I feel like for me, the thing that I always try to do is I talk about, like, so for example, I've done projects working with folks that are like in treatment for addiction or for even incarcerated. And the first thing that I do is just like introduce myself and introduce my background and my family and just be like, look, like people have been through some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like just because
Yeah.
I'm here and you're there, like it's like, but for the grace of God go I. Like we've
Yep.
all seen and done things in our lives, and I really count it as my good fortune that like having grown up in a family that struggled with addiction and was incarcerated and all of these things, that I found art at such a young age, and it sort of put me in a position where I could then be the person that's like showing up to these spaces. But I just know that like I'm not making a big distinction here. I'm just like, this is kind of the way it shook out. And I think like that sense of just kind of being like, look, we're all people here feels like such an important kind of first step, because I think that's like what the stigma is around so many, just things in life, is this sort of like attempt to kind of separate us and be like, oh, you're like this and you're like this. And again, the rise of fascism, that's their whole fucking playbook. You're bad and you're good. You're like this and you're like that. And so if you can just start the conversation by being like, what makes us, what do we have in common? And then the other thing that I like to talk about is just like, I just have a memory of like a woman who was like, I can't draw for shit. And I was like, but you can go like that. Right. And she was like,
Yeah.
it's having so much fun. She was like, oh,
Yeah.
I always do that. She was like, this is how I do art. And I was like, then that's your art. Like there's nobody out here telling you that it can't be like you doing these beautiful circles with your hand and bringing in all these wild colors and just going over and over again. Like, yes, like your only problem here is that somebody gave you the idea that that's not art. That is art. Do it, and for her, it was like really engaging her body and really, just beautiful in all these ways. And if you think about, so often it's just like the critic in our mind, or it's just like the society saying you're not this, you're not that. And so kind of just breaking that down and being like, look, we decide what art is, like all of us together. So like that means you too.
There was something about when you were expressing like there's the physicality of helping somebody along, with the circles and such. And I think some of my biggest discoveries have been like what the language is, not like just like the art of language, but like of dance and movement. Like I think so much, at least in my head, I was caught up with like analytical answers, even the questions I ask on this show,
Yeah.
right? Like what is the answer to it? And then when I want to say something like, we get frustrated, we get angry, we get overworked and stuff. And then when I would dance, like I just started dancing again. Like,
Yeah.
my partner, Jenny, and I, we would go out and dance. And I'm like,
Awesome.
this is me freaking yelling out randomly and like, like getting it out. And I was like, it's out there because my brain was so, how are you doing today, Ken? I'm feeling better because the sun was out. Not to minimize like how I'm feeling or something, but it was like, how do I say when I'm feeling when my arms have to like spaz out and my legs, and I want to yell too loud. And it's just something you were saying about the movement, or like, okay, you don't know how to sketch or illustrate. What about this arm doing those big old circles? Like, let's get it on, right?
Yes, and that is so much a part of a healing too. And I think that's what we're realizing. Like I love the analytical mind, God bless it. And I love talk therapy, like God bless it. But
Yep.
we are learning that is not complete. That you have to move your body. You have to, you have to sort of, and I think for a lot of us, depending on just whatever trauma throws us out of our body, like it disconnects us, it makes it sort of unsafe to inhabit the body. And so, and there's so much even just about kind of like the way our culture is set up that just sort of teaches us to sort of separate those things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're kind of winning back this relationship to our own bodies at this moment.
I love that.
And some of that is through dancing and through like realizing that dancing really is some like collective power and healing. I just like last week, it's been like 20-30 degrees in New York.
Yeah.
And my friend wanted to go dancing and I was like, oh, this is mental health. And yeah, I was on the dance floor screaming just out, that you just, and then I made it through the week and I was like, this is not a frivolous practice. This is a real mental health practice.
Oh my goodness. And it was talking. It was just realized, like, clicking in my head that I'm talking and expressing, and everybody else is around it. But I also think, like, even around the environment, I think, like, picking out the particular environment, like, around artists. And we go to a goth club where people, like, when it comes to, like, all these kind of ideas and categories, kind of like, let's erase some of those and let humans be humans and move around. Not like as an ideal, but as an environment to inhabit. So that's what I've been dropping into.
Nice. Love it.
To be able to talk. You were talking. I don't want to ask the question, what is art, because a lot in what you were talking about and the interactivity, was really getting after that. And I ask about the role of art, and I really loved what you say about space, and about space now, and in resistance against fascism. This is the question. This is the curious question, deeply curious, impersonal, professional. But what 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 art project or projects recently you've kind of taken over your time and your mind for you to develop in the direction as you swoon creating?
Well, right now I'm working on a fairy tale called Queen Hattie and the Heartstone. And it's like quite a classical fairy tale that's about, like, it's a kind of a Jungian fairy tale about like integration in the psyche, but it's very much about confronting repressed trauma, ending cycles of perpetuating the trauma, and kind of coming into your higher power. And it's funny because when I tell people the story, I think of it as this deeply internal story. But there's a character in the story called the Rat King. And I find as I talk about it, everyone's like, oh my God, the Rat King. Like, that there is a way in which even these kind of deeply personal stories can really overlay onto our lives, in the kind of like social and political struggles that we are having. But yeah, where I'm at is really in like deep fantasy building, working on film and working on narratives that have like multiple kind of points of entry. I I had this thing happen, like it's been quite a few years now, where I feel like the train of my creative process like jumped the track while I wasn't looking. And now when I need to express something or when something happens in my life, it comes out through long form narrative, which is super weird for me because that is not how I used to express myself before. But even, I lost one of my best friends this year and it was such a harrowing experience.
Yeah.
And I wrote a sci-fi about it. I was like,
Yeah.
who are you? What is
Yeah.
this? But that was
Yeah.
how I grieved. And I really deeply, deeply like put the grief into that story. And so that's just what I'm finding. Like, that's sort of who I am right now. And that's how I'm expressing myself and needing to figure out how that comes out in the world, because that is not how people know me.
The dealing with grief, I had a recent amazing experience where I was going to an art exhibition. It was in Salem, Oregon. It was done by Amanda Freeman, who's a fantastic photographer. And there was an artist talk and a reception, beautiful native food and all this. And I went to it. And I knew the artist and I was excited about the exhibit and the activism around this project and awareness. It was very important to me. 3 hours later, I didn't know that they had carried me through a public ceremony about folks who are lost and missing and grief. And now I'm 2 hours in. I'm a neighbor and a friend of these people's because I'm singing with them. And then, now I had never had the opportunity to have space for more full public grief, and the drums getting it out and the singing getting it out. And I'm like, this is a Tuesday. Like, and I'm 53. Like, I've just been gifted this one thing out of nowhere. And now I know that I can deal with some recent losses and pain and not figure that shit out on my own. Like, and not even do
Yes.
it in ways like, Ken, are you okay now after 2 months? No, I'm not okay. I'm still missing that person. Like,
Yeah.
and so I had that. And so, and, you know, looking to talk to you and really thinking about space and dealing with the shit, right? You know, there's art and then there's the shit that like get through and put out. It was so powerful. So my brain's been like really vibing on that energy of how to get it out, and what art does. And so like talking to you right now has like a special kind of like connection and meeting, because my brain's exploded with that space and saying, Ken, don't, the analytical thing, right? Don't try to figure out exactly how you are.
Yeah.
Yell it out, and it might sound like exactly how you're doing at the movement. I'm like, okay, lesson learned. Like, I'm going to take that in. Like, I'm going to use this going forth. And
I love
so,
that she
yeah.
made a ritual that, because it's like, that's what culture is we need to figure out, how do we grieve? And she took the incentive to do that. That's amazing. I love that.
Well, even the notions of time, right? Because we're caught up, right? And like, I'm like, what's the use of me checking? Like, and I had a meeting afterwards. I didn't like, I'm like, no, all that stuff, I'm going to show up there later on. I'm looking at some strange clock right now, and I'm in a process that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like when it's done,
because time becomes different in those spaces. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is like, you asked about what art is, and I have so many different answers for that, but you just sort of made me think of timelessness as one of the answers, right? That like when we are in the sort of linearity of like the super rational time that kind of makes like, you know, makes our cities function and makes the math add up. And that's fucking great. And like, God bless that we have that. But it is not all that there is, right? We are sort of aware that like, whether by perception or, you know, however you account this, there are other realms that exist within our realm, and that our mind and our consciousness are capable of sort of shifting between these different states. And I think that you know, what you described about getting into that grief and getting into that singing and the drumming, and then all of a sudden your time is different, like that is such a, it's because like when you're in the space of like art, creativity, dance, storytelling, it's like you're in a realm where it's why you get those, you sudden inspiration, you connect this to that and that to this, and it's all happening in an instant, because we are sort of leaving the linear realm for a moment, and what seemed impossible before becomes possible in that realm. And that's like the other thing that gets me so excited about why art is so important, even in these moments of dire urgency.
Yeah.
That we need to maintain the ability to imagine alternatives, and that like nothing gives us like the freedom and the agency and the ability to connect the dots in unusual ways, like giving ourselves time to be in that creative space. And so even when we're like up against this system that's so destructive and terrifying, like the ability to sort of drop into the timeless place, like remains not only one of our medicines, but one of our like spaces to build new potential from.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe you could just talk at me for an hour and talk to the audience. Well, maybe it ends up. Maybe everybody this ends up being a teaser. Like, I mean, this intro to Swoon, and like if we could surmise such a thing. Hey, tell seriously. Tell the listeners where to find your work, and like you know, where you want them to interact or think and look at something, or you know, all that stuff.
Okay, well, actually, first, let me draw you a card. I have my Sibilant Sisters Oracle deck that I'm in the middle of prototyping. Would you like me to pull you a card?
I absolutely. You're blowing me away. Of course, yes. Thank you.
Okay, you never know. You always got to ask. Some people don't like cards, so I take that seriously.
This is like 100% copacetic. Yes.
All right, let's see what we got. We got the girls in school. I'm gonna draw you another card because I want more information on this one.
Okay.
So the girls in school is all about when we feel that there's something that we're missing, that there's okay, so I have the second one pulled. It hasn't turned over yet. So the girls in school is all about, so in the fairy tale, the character, she doesn't have the mothering that she needs, and she sees these other kids that do, and she feels like, you prissy little brats. You don't understand. She's really kind of angry at them, actually. And the sort of the lesson of this card is that there actually often is usually a softness under that, where the deeper truth is, I actually kind of need some mothering, or whatever it is that I need, that it seems like other people have, and that rather than kind of enemyizing them, like, maybe it's time for me to ask myself, like, do I need that? And then figure out how I can give it to myself, because now we're adults, right?
Yeah.
And then the next card we got, rise to a challenge, the plunger. So here's how I'm going to interpret this. So there's a need to rise to a challenge, and that in order to have the resources to rise to the challenge, you might want to sort of figure out what it is that you say, like, when you feel that sense of anger of like, these people have what I don't, and then say to yourself, what is it that I need, and how can I give that to myself? And that's going to be the magic that gives you the power to rise to the challenge.
I could not thank you more. This is the type of beautiful energy in talking, and I do view it. I don't know. This year is the world is the way it is, but I've looked to make different choices and go about things a different way, and it's just seeing the importance of like talking and talking to you. And again, not the full deference, but it is truly an honor given all the work that you've done. And not only that, like just chatting now and like kind of like, our brains get like charged by art. So thanks for the brain charge, and listeners, you're welcome for the brain charge.
And you asked about like where, so I guess just my website is SWOON Studio, and then Instagram, and that's sort of mainly where I'm sharing these days. But keep an eye out for the Sibilant Sisters deck and for Queen Hetty and the Heartstone when that starts to emerge.
I'm super excited about that. Hey, the name of the name of the podcast is Something Rather Than Nothing podcast. Towards the end of our interview here, you could tell me, hey Ken, whatever on that. But I'll ask you, why is there something rather than nothing?
Oh, that is such a tough question, because that sort of feels like it gets at the kind of core of, the idea that from the void there came a longing, and that longing created all that there is. And why do we, I often feel like one of our kind of roles as like living creatures is to side with life and to side with creation. And why do we side with that? I don't know. But for some reason we do. That, like, as we're rowing up the stream, like we row in that direction. We say, we understand that there is death and there is destruction and there is sort of this force that like creates renewal. But somehow amidst all that, we sort of row in the direction of growth and of life. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why that sort of something making is who we are, but I do know that it is.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, everybody, search up the art SWOON has done, photos, the interactivity around it, and just again, for your thinking and what you do. Thank you so much. And we probably have a 90-minute episode in us as well, but we could,
the teaser. It's the teaser.
We could talk it out right now. This is
thank you.
Thanks again. Pleasure to meet you. And
great. you.
I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Sounds
Take
good.
care.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.